Hi everyone, my name is Amber and this is my review of The Favourites by Layne Fargo. The Favourites came out in January 2025 and it is already proving to be one of the most popular books of the year. The hype is certainly building, so I kind of wanted to share my own thoughts and feelings on this book and possibly get some sort of discussion going in the comments below. I will keep this review completely spoiler free, as usual. If you do want to spoil anything in the comments, please add a spoiler tag just to warn people in case they scroll through and then accidentally get spoiled. As always with my reviews, I give you a very brief synopsis of the plot before going into my thoughts and feelings. So let's get started. So normally I give my own synopsis rather than reading from the back of the book, but in this case I did want to read it to you because there are one or two things that I would like to address from the synopsis later on. So this is the synopsis from the US edition on Goodreads. To the world, they were a scandal, to each other an obsession, an epic love story set in the sparkling savage sphere of elite figure skating about a woman determined to carve her own path on and off the ice. She may not have a famous name, funding, or her family's support, but Katarina Shaw has always known that she was destined to become an Olympic skater. When she meets Heath Rocher, a lonely kid stuck in the foster care system, their instant connection makes them a formidable duo on the ice. Clinging to skating and each other to escape their turbulent lives, Kat and Heath go from childhood sweethearts to champion ice skaters, captivating the world with their scorching chemistry, rebellious style, and roller coaster relationship, until a shocking incident at the Olympic Games brings their partnership to a sudden end. As the 10-year anniversary of their final skate approaches, an unauthorised documentary reignites the public obsession with Shaw and Rocher, claiming to uncover the real story through interviews with their closest friends and fiercest rivals. Kat wants nothing to do with the documentary, but she can't stand the thought of someone else defining her legacy either. So, after a decade of silence, she's telling her story, from the childhood tragedies that created her all-consuming bond with Keith, to the clash of desires that tore them apart. Sensational rumours have haunted their every step for years, but the truth may be even more shocking than the headlines. So I think let's start with what initially drew me to this book in the first place. First and foremost, it was the ice dancing. I unfortunately spend a lot of time online. A few years back, I became aware of a real-life ice skating dancing duo called Tessa and Scott. I think this was when their final dance went completely viral online and everyone was convinced they were together, but they were seeing different people. So this led me down various rabbit holes, and now my husband and I are taking ice skating lessons together. The second thing that drew me to the book is that the synopsis immediately started ringing Taylor Jenkins Reid alarm bells in my head. Taylor Jenkins Reid is one of my all-time favourite authors. She's an auto-buy author for me. I love her stuff. And unfortunately for me, she releases books so slowly that I find myself craving books that can give me similar feelings. And The Favourites delivered. The author, Layne Fargo, has decided in this book to mix the interview style that I love with first-person prose, and it worked incredibly well. So the interviews are interspersed throughout the book, roughly every other chapter, and these interview segments provided insight, humour, and also a lot of tension. Often they would end in an almost cliffhanger, which worked so well, and they often kept me reading long into the night. So through the first person point of view, the reader gets to know the real Katarina, which is why I think it was a really good choice to write this book as a mix between the interviews and what really happened through Katarina's point of view. I think just one or the other wouldn't have worked so well, and I don't think it would have worked as well as a Daisy Jones and the Six style, where the entire thing is interviews, because that wouldn't give you as much of a chance to get into Katarina's head, and I think that leaves a lot of opportunities for vagueness or uncertainty, whereas Katarina as a character is someone who is blunt and to the point, and so you really wanted to be in her head as she described the real events. So in my opinion, Katarina isn't a difficult character to root for, but I think if you met her in real life, you would almost certainly not be a fan. Kat is really determined and focused and passionate about skating and relationships and friendships, but she is also a really angry person, and she comes across as almost volatile even in her own perspective. She doesn't want anything to get in the way of her getting to the Olympics and winning the gold medal. Whenever anything threatens that goal, she is unhappy, to say the least. But at the same time, I actually found her to be very level-headed and considerate in a lot of ways, and I think that's why it was important to see things from her perspective, because whereas these outsiders or people who were admittedly quite close to her, they said that she did things and they accused her of, you know, being angry, volatile, all of those things. And absolutely that is the way that she comes across. But there's always a consideration or a reasoning behind it when you're in her point of view. And you can see that she is mulling things over, and the first kind of way that she reacts to a situation isn't always the same way that she would react once she has a chance to process it, if that makes sense. And if these characters just gave her a little bit more time and were more patient with her, or just like sat back and gave her, you know, the opportunity to think about what's going on, they could have gotten a completely different reaction. But because they perhaps pushed her first, or they said something to her, her immediate reaction was not something that they liked, and then they took that and ran with it. And it was really interesting seeing the two sides to that. I really enjoyed reading about cats, and I thought that The Favourites was one of those books where you feel like you're reading a biography or autobiography of a real person. These characters all felt very real to me. That's something that I really enjoy about Taylor Jenkins Reid's books as well, because I am fully convinced Evelyn Hugo was a real person at this point. Daisy Jones was actually in a band, and I know absolutely nothing about tennis, so you could tell me that Carrie Soto was a real person, I would believe you, because that is the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote it. The characters were also real, and that is exactly what Layne Fargo has pulled off in this one. I will say there are different levels to it, so Taylor Jenkins Reid is like a 10, obviously, for writing these kinds of characters. Layne Fargo, I would say, is more an 8, 8.5, but I would be really interested to see how Layne Fargo's writing develops, if she wants to do more books in a similar sort of world, or similar types of books about famous or almost famous characters, people in a niche sport or industry. I would eat that up. I would really like to see how her writing progresses from here. So still on the topic of the characters, because this book is only told from Kat's perspective, you, I don't think, get to know Heath as well as you do Kat. I found it really difficult to see their relationship as an epic love story, as it says in the US description. I don't think it says this in the UK edition. Let me just quickly double check. No, in fact, there's a quote at the top of the UK edition which says, "Everyone thinks Heath Rocher was my first love. He wasn't. My first love was figure skating," which is a quote from the book. And I think that actually summarizes this book much better than the line about epic love and stuff in the US edition, because this book is about Kat and her ice skating. It's not necessarily about Heath. And as I said, I don't think their relationship is depicted as an epic love story. Of course, it is spanning through the years. They go from childhood sweethearts, well, best friends, then childhood sweethearts, and it progresses. But I feel like the main focus of this book was Kat's journey to gold and then her downfall. And another reason I don't think it's an epic love story either is because I just don't think you see enough of Heath for that. And I think if Layne Fargo wanted it to be an epic love story, then we would have seen more of him, surely. What I mean by not seeing enough of him or not knowing enough about him is that partly we don't see enough of his background or childhood. We know that he comes from foster care, and we know that he's had seemingly a traumatic time, but he doesn't talk about it. And I'm still not clear on whether he has actually told Kat about his history, or if he just showed up in her life and sort of attached himself to her because that was the only good thing in his life at the time. Heath comes across as a very obsessive person, and he is hyper focused on Kat because she is the only thing that he's got. And I think for me, to properly understand Heath's character, I would have wanted to see more of his background and them to have some more conversations about it, and where he sort of opens up to Kat and reveals what was happening. And I think that would have changed the vibe of the book a little bit, because like I said, the vibe of the book is focused on Kat and the ice skating and not necessarily on the two of them and their relationship. But I do think it would have added a little bit extra for me if Heath had opened up, or maybe Kat had found out about his history a little bit more, just to make him more of a well-rounded character. In the middle of the book, he goes missing for a bit. I don't think that's a spoiler. He goes missing for a few years and they cut contact. They lose contact and Kat doesn't know where he is. It's not like a missing persons case or anything. So obviously I don't think that people need to talk about their trauma, but I think the author could have addressed it or woven in that plot point a bit better to make us get a better feel for Heath. There's also a very rich cast of side characters as well, many of whom were very complex and well written. I personally really enjoyed reading about Ellis, who was an ice dancer who I think went to the Olympics. He definitely competed anyway, and then he starts his own gossip site and he starts reporting on Kat and Heath, eventually just Kat, and eventually again both of them together, and he kind of follows their story, and he's part of the reason why there is so much drama surrounding their relationship. He's part of the reason why the focus isn't on Kat winning the gold and her career, it's mainly about relationships. And the book briefly discusses, or I wouldn't say briefly actually, the book is about how dangerous that kind of marketing and attention can be. Why aren't we focusing on Kat's career and ambitions and things, because she has been working up towards this for her whole life. Why are we so focused on just the relationship? But at the same time, if the sites and other media weren't focused on Kat and Heath's relationship, would they have gotten that much attention as ice dancers, and would they have gotten through to all of the finals and competitions that they were trying to? I don't think it's necessarily a black and white situation. I think it's very nuanced, and I really like the way that that was written. I also really enjoyed seeing Kat's view of Sheila Lynn, who was an Olympic gold medalist in ice dancing. Sheila is someone that Kat really looks up to from the beginning. She's the one who made Kat want to start ice dancing in the first place when Kat saw her on TV. And Kat tries to mimic Sheila a lot and be just like her and have ice dancing be her entire life. And I really enjoyed seeing Kat's views on that change throughout the book. One character that I do have really mixed feelings on actually is Bella. That's mostly due to the last 100 or 50 pages or so. So obviously it's difficult to say why because of spoilers, but I'd love to know if you guys liked Bella or if you were a bit iffy about her character. I think that Layne Fargo's thriller writing background really shone in this book, which I thought was really interesting. I wasn't expecting it. It especially shines through towards the end of the book, although it is arguably present throughout the book, particularly in the interviews. As I mentioned, they often ended in cliffhangers. Everything starts to ramp up around the 80% mark as the characters head to the Olympics, and I really enjoyed the way that Layne Fargo wrote the tension here. That's what really led me to not being able to put the book down. I read the last probably 150 pages without stopping, and in a way this is about to get deep maybe. I wonder if Layne Fargo was trying to mimic the progression of an ice dance routine with like the slightly slower start and then the sort of back and forth flirting relationship kind of building to a big crescendo at the end. And I don't know if that's just me like making this too much of a bigger deal than it is, but that's kind of the impression that I got. That's kind of what the pacing feels like in this book. I have to say though, I didn't really like the very end of the book, like where the characters ended up. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything because that would just be rude, but I think the reason I didn't like it is because the relationships felt way too messy to me, at least for me to feel fully comfortable with the ending. Also, I'm thinking, if you really think about it, Kat and Heath's whole thing was about challenging the audience during their dances and making them uncomfortable and also leaving them wanting more. So I guess it kind of works with the overall theme of the book. It's just not where I wanted things to end up, because the thought of that happening in real life makes me very uncomfortable. That's just a personal thing. So if you couldn't tell, I really enjoyed my time with The Favourites, and I'm rating it 4.5 stars. I think I'm personally going to sit on it for a little while longer before deciding whether to purchase my own copy of the book, because this copy is obviously from the library, you can tell by the shine, because I tend to only keep books that I'm definitely going to reread in the future, so like my absolute favourites. But 4.5 is a pretty good rating, and I may well want to reread this in the future at some point. So right now I am leaning towards it being a contender. Also, when are we getting a TV show? Please, I need an adaptation of this so that I can see Kat and Heath and everyone else on TV. So that was my review of The Favourites by Layne Fargo. If you have read this book, let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you all in the next video. Bye.